There are moments when time no longer moves at its normal pace. It falls one drop at a time, heavy as metal, striking directly against your awareness. Every second is no longer a unit of measurement, but a test. A small miscalculation in pulling force, a few degrees of angle error, or an anchor point set in the wrong place can turn a rescue into a chain of irreversible failures. And in moments like these, every second that passes is not just time slipping away, but the limits themselves being tested. Our team received the rescue call just as dusk was settling in. When we arrived, a tractor-trailer weighing nearly 77,000 pounds was trapped between steel rebar structures at a construction site, its rear wheels already hanging almost 2.5 feet past the edge of the road. Beneath it was a deep open drop. The roadway was weak, and one wrong load distribution could collapse the entire structure. We deployed 2 heavy wreckers, each weighing over 100,000 pounds, positioned at opposite angles to create balance. Steel cables measuring 1.25 inches in diameter, rated for roughly 150,000 pounds, were attached to the chassis frame, not the cab, not the trailer, to prevent structural deformation. The hardest part was not pulling, it was holding. We applied an initial tension of around 35,000 pounds on each side, just enough to suspend the truck in a balanced state and reduce pressure on the wheels that had slipped. Every inch of movement was controlled by hand signals. There was no room for rushing. After nearly an hour of tense recovery work, the truck finally returned to solid ground. In a situation this fragile, I understood that greater force is not always the solution. Control is what keeps everything from collapsing. More than 20 miles north of there, we received another call for assistance. A truck stranded in dangerous mountain terrain. A full combination rig, tractor and 2 trailers, nearly 90 feet long, had slid off the road and was lying sideways on a mountain slope. Even unloaded, it still weighed over 35,000 pounds, and the 35-degree angle placed abnormal compression throughout the entire system. Amir, operating the wrecker, began positioning cables behind the second trailer. The goal was to separate the 2 trailers and recover them one section at a time. The rear trailer would come out first, then the front trailer, then the tractor. We knew immediately, pulling it as one piece was impossible. The second plan was to disconnect the dolly coupling between the 2 trailers, but the pressure on the locking pin had jammed it tight. We had to apply a light pull from the rear, around 10,000 to 12,000 pounds, to release the load. Then we noticed something small but critical. The air valve had not been bled off. Only after releasing the pressure did the pin finally let go. That was the moment that reminded me. Sometimes the problem is not force, but understanding the system. Once separated, we handled each section individually. The first trailer was recovered using a double-line pull, doubling the winch force to around 40,000 pounds, aligning it back into the lane and bringing it safely onto the road. The second trailer was more complicated. We used the crane to lift the front about 1 foot, changing the contact angle before pulling. The tractor had a damaged air system, meaning the brakes would not function. We had to temporarily reconnect the air lines and restore minimum pressure just to control the wheels during recovery. Every step was slow. Every step required calculation. And finally, Amir made one controlled pull from behind, bringing the remaining trailer and tractor back onto the roadway. There are no truly impossible situations, only problems that have not yet been broken down the right way. The last case looked deceptively simple. An international tractor carrying around 30,000 pounds of motor oil had sunk into a grassy field after rain. We used a recovery truck with a 20,000-pound winch without a snatch block. That meant every pound of direct pulling force had to be exact. We began preparing the cables and tow hooks, attaching them to the front of the truck.
Heavy he actually is.
I told the driver, keep it in drive, release the brakes completely, and apply light throttle when signaled.
You're just kind of going to want to point your wheel like you're going to drive straight where that line is going, okay?
Initial pulling force was around 12,000, 15,000 pounds. The cable tightened, but the truck did not move. That was the friction of mud, the force you cannot see, but one that is always there. The moment the wheels began to turn, resistance dropped suddenly. Without control, the truck could lurch forward and shock the drivetrain.
Alright. Yep.
We held the force steady and pulled continuously, never jerking.
Right there.
The International rolled back onto the road like a beast being pulled free from the swamp. The easy situations are often the most deceptive. Complacency is what causes the greatest damage.
He wasn't ready for his drop time. And
Through every rescue, I've learned that the pressure on our shoulders does not come only from the tons of cargo, the steel cables stretched tight, or the unstable slopes beneath our feet. That pressure comes from knowing that every second that passes, every inch of movement, every pound of pulling force could be the final limit. And when you stand on that line, between life and death, between a successful recovery and disaster, you learn something so simple it almost feels unbelievable. Time is not your enemy. Hurry is. If you want to keep following moments stretched as tight as steel cables like these, make sure to like and subscribe, because the stories still ahead are even harsher than this one.